listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Marie Murphy. If you are engaging in anything you think counts as infidelity, you have come to the right place. I'm a relationship coach, and I provide shame-free, blame-free, non-judgmental coaching to people who are engaging in anything they think counts as infidelity. People who cheat or engage in any sort of infidelity often get a bad rap, but I believe that you are entitled to guidance and support that respects the fullness of your humanity and the complexity of your situation. I understand that life gets a little complicated sometimes, and I'm here to help you sort out your infidelity situation in a way that's truly right for you. I'm not going to tell you what you should do or what you have to do, and I'm not going to shove a bunch of prescriptive advice down your throat. So if you would like my help sorting out your infidelity situation, let's work together. You can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. Okay, today we're going to talk about the emotions and the intensity of the emotions that may accompany a new infidelity situation. The beginning of any new romantic or sexual connection or relationship can be pretty darn intense. We may meet someone who seems like the most amazing creature we've ever encountered in our lives, and getting to know them may be an absolutely amazing experience. And this can be pretty intoxicating, whether or not there's any in-person physical connection. But of course, amazing sex or amazing physical chemistry can be a uniquely and intensely pleasurable experience. Being in the throes of infatuation and lust and love with someone you think is wonderful and who also thinks you are wonderful can be a really, really intense high. And I use the word high deliberately. As we've talked about in past episodes, the brain chemistry of being in this state of new relationship energy is similar to the brain chemistry of being high on cocaine. And although some people interpret this to mean that new relationship energy is bad, that isn't the point that I'm making. The point is that there are some really potent highs out there that we can experience in life. And having these experiences can be such a wonderful part of being alive and being human. And these really intensely pleasurable states, these highs, may be so different from the way we're used to experiencing life that we may not really know how to handle these experiences. We may not know how to deal with these really intense emotions. We may not know how to conduct ourselves when we're feeling a whole bunch of really intense emotions. And of course, on top of what I've just said, the intensity of the feelings that may come with a new relationship or a new romantic or sexual connection are likely to be compounded if our new relationship or new connection is in any way forbidden or illicit. So if our new relationship involves infidelity, the high of experiencing a new and amazing connection with a wonderful human being may be even higher and potentially even exponentially higher. And here are a few reasons why this may be the case. On the one hand, the fact that you're doing something that is perhaps outside of the bounds of a committed relationship, or is something that is outside of the bounds of the person you're involved with committed relationship, or maybe both things are happening at once, can be kind of exciting, right? It may also be really stressful, and we will talk about that later. But for now, let's just highlight the fact that you may be doing something that seems risky and daring and outside of the conventions of your normal life. And that can be really exhilarating in addition to potentially being stressful. Another thing is you may feel like you're doing something that is for yourself, that's just for you. And if you've spent any number of years dedicating yourself to other people's well-being, and you haven't done much lately or ever that's for you and just for you, having an experience that is just yours may quench a very deep thirst. And of course, it may be exciting to have a secret. It may be exciting to feel like you're getting away with something. It may be really fun and wonderful to have this private experience that no one else knows about. It may be exciting to sneak around. It may be exciting to do something that no one would suspect you of doing. And also, it's possible that you may feel like you're rebelling or doing something naughty, and that may have real appeal for you. For some people, the idea that they're doing something bad is really stressful, but for other people, it's arousing. And if you fall into that latter category, you may really get off on the naughtiness element. And if that's your experience, that can be really pleasurable. Or it may be something else entirely about your infidelity situation that's exciting for you and makes the whole thing particularly intoxicating for you, above and beyond the quality of the connection with the person or persons you're involved with. And so the point is just that you may be filled to the brim with intensely positive emotions. It may feel like you are going to explode with feeling at any given moment. And we're not even talking about the difficult emotions yet, but we will. For now, what I really want to emphasize is that dealing with a deluge of good feelings can seem really overwhelming. All of the good stuff may feel like just too much to handle, especially if all of these good feelings are in stark contrast to the way we're used to feeling or have been used to feeling for any length of time. So, what do we do with all of this? How can we handle the magnitude and the quality and the mixture of our feelings? If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've heard me say this before. Feelings or emotions are sensations in our body that are produced by our thinking. There are other definitions of feelings out there, but I think this one is by far the most useful, right? Feelings are sensations in our body that are produced by our thinking. We assign one word names to these feelings like happiness or despair or lust or revulsion or sympathy or malice or desire, right? And we consider some feelings, quote unquote, good, and we consider other feelings, quote unquote, bad or positive and negative or healthy and unhealthy. But in essence, all emotions are just energy and motion flowing through our bodies. They're particular vibrational flavors that we can experience in our physical being. And although we might like the way that some of these vibrations feel more than we like the way that others feel, that doesn't mean that it's fundamentally good to experience so-called good feelings and bad to experience the so-called bad feelings. Whether we like the feeling or not, it's all just energy moving through us. And all feelings, regardless of how good or bad they feel, are normal, natural parts of the human experience. And I always use the word normal quite lightly, and I'm doing that here. But what I mean is the spectrum of the quote unquote normal human experience is really broad and includes a lot of feelings, not just like happy, peaceful, calm, content, satisfied. The problem, though, is that most of us don't ever learn this stuff. Most of us don't ever learn much at all, if anything, about our feelings. So we don't really know what they are or what to do with them. And on a day to day basis, we may muddle along with our feelings well enough, or seemingly well enough. But when our feelings become really big and intense and are different from what we're used to experiencing, it may seem like we have a full blown crisis on our hands. And indeed, for some folks who are in the early stages of an infidelity situation, the emotional intensity of the experience seems like an emergency. It can seem like a really big problem to be experiencing the intense highs that can come with a new affair or a new infidelity situation of any sort. And when our feelings seem like a problem, or even better yet, an emergency, we often think that we have to do something about them. And our efforts to do something with our feelings can take many forms. Here are a few examples. You may be so excited about your new affair partner or the new person you've made a connection with that you might attempt to communicate with them constantly. You've got this new good thing and it feels so good to connect with them. And you may not want to let it go or step back from it for even a second. You may want to do everything in your power to ensure that you are fully available to this new and intoxicating experience in your every waking moment. Another thing that you may be experiencing is a sense of desperation to understand what the whole experience means. The whole thing may seemingly have arisen out of nowhere. And now that it's here, you may be frantically trying to understand how it all came about and what's going to happen and what it all means for you. And this may involve a lot of thinking on your end. It may involve a lot of enthusiastic attempts to think about what your person is thinking on their end, for instance. It may involve just a lot of rumination, right? And you may think that all of this rumination is useful. Similarly, you may be very eager to figure out what's going to happen next. You may be convinced that you need to know right now exactly how this whole thing is going to play out. And see above, this may entail a lot of thinking about what your partner's thinking and trying to figure out like what they want. And we also may try to plan out everything that's going to happen in great detail in our minds. And if we can't figure out exactly what the future will look like, we may start to entertain worst case scenarios because the uncertainty of it all is just too much for us. We've got this new and intensely good thing happening, and the experience may seem so great that it kind of scares us. On the one hand, we may feel amazing, but on the other hand, feeling amazing may seem so foreign to us that we're afraid to allow ourselves to just feel amazing. Or we may feel super clingy and attached. We might not be able to bear the idea of the good feelings going away. So, paradoxically, we may look for ways to convince ourselves that all the good things that are happening can't possibly last. And that might sound contradictory and self defeating, but that's the whole point. When we're feeling insanely great and also kind of scared of feeling insanely great, we may think some pretty contradictory and self defeating thoughts, and we may do some pretty contradictory and self defeating things. Now, that's not to say that you should not do any of the things I just mentioned, or that it's the end of the world if you have been doing these kinds of things. However, it is possible that doing the kinds of things I just mentioned doesn't help you with anything much. For instance, it really isn't possible to predict the future of your infidelity situation. And it probably isn't possible to plan out every single next step of what's going to happen within your infidelity situation today. Now, your brain may tell you that it's absolutely necessary to do this. A lot of people I talk to who are in the throes of a new infidelity situation are pretty sure that they really do need to map out the entire future of how things are going to unfold as quickly as they possibly can. And similarly, sometimes it really does seem like we need to be available to text or talk or see our affair partner whenever they might be available, because we really may believe that if we aren't as available as we can possibly be, the whole glorious adventure will come to an end. We may know, perhaps, that we can't predict the future. We may know intellectually that if we're not available for one phone call from our affair partner, they're not going to end the whole thing. But in some moments, it may actually seem that way, right? Our brains love to look for problems and try to solve them. And although this can be really useful in some cases, when we let this tendency run wild, it does not serve us at times. We need to be aware that when emotion is high, intelligence is low. When we are awash in super intense emotions, especially if they seem to be competing with each other, our thoughts are probably all over the place. Our thoughts create our feelings. So if our emotions are really intense and conflicting, it's a good indication that our thoughts are all over the board, right? When this is happening, though, what usually happens is we think we need to do something in order to fix the problem of our intense emotions, but we aren't actually in any state to do so. right? When emotion is high, intelligence is low. And to this point, you may not even have a clear sense of what you actually want out of your infidelity situation. But this doesn't have to be a problem. It may sound like one, but I promise it really isn't. If you're in the midst of a very new, very fresh, very exciting infidelity situation, you don't necessarily have to do anything right away. You don't necessarily have to make any big decisions. Quite simply, your job in the moment may be to ride the wave of the emotions you're experiencing. Here's an important caveat to that. If your infidelity situation is discovered or disclosed very quickly, or if you're pretty sure that's going to happen, then you may have some decisions to make and you may need to take some immediate actions. But if the whole thing is going to remain a private matter if you let it, you may not have to do anything definitive right away. And it simply may not be productive to attempt to do anything right away or to figure out much of anything when your emotions are all over the place. End of caveat. As I said earlier, if you're in the early stages of an infidelity situation that seemed to have come out of nowhere, you may be experiencing some intensely uncomfortable emotions in addition to the positive ones. You may feel bad about what you're doing. You might feel guilt or shame or self reproach. And these feelings, as I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, can be really intense too, in addition to the positive feelings that you may be experiencing quite intensely. So, this is a lot. And even if you don't feel guilty per se about what you're doing, even if you don't feel bad about your infidelity, you might feel stressed or anxious, right? Even if you don't feel bad per se about what you're doing, you might not like the idea of getting caught getting what you're doing. And if you're thinking about what might happen in the future, if you're trying to figure out all of the possible future outcomes of your current situation, you may feel overwhelmed and frazzled and anxious and potentially full of impatience or desperation or plain old uncertainty. That's a crowd favorite. Nobody likes uncertainty. But whatever specific emotions you're feeling, it just may be a whole lot put together. The highs and lows of your current life experience may be quite an intense emotional roller coaster ride. And as I said earlier, when our feelings seem like a problem, when the roller coaster ride seems like it's too much for us, we tend to try to do something about the situation that's causing our feelings. And to reiterate, this may be especially the case when we're experiencing not only intense emotions, but intense and conflicting emotions. When something seems really great and really problematic, we may be even more likely to freak out and attempt to take action that we think will solve our problem. But really, the most immediate problem you're facing is that you're feeling uncomfortable. And there isn't any kind of action you can take that will solve that problem. And if you don't know yet what you want to come out of your infidelity situation, which you probably don't if it's very new, then it's going to be really hard to take any kind of action that will actually serve your desired long-term outcomes because guess what? You don't yet know what those are. And then, of course, on top of that, it's probably going to be pretty challenging to clarify what you want when you're intoxicated with all of these intense and possibly competing emotions. Again, when emotion is high, intelligence is low. So we're in kind of a predicament. We think we have to do a whole bunch of stuff. We think we have to figure out a whole bunch of stuff, but we kind of can't. So what do we do about this? Well, what if we didn't have to do anything other than allow ourselves to feel all of our crazy, intense, potentially conflicting feelings? What if being in the midst of a crazy new infidelity situation does not require you to take any kind of decisive action or make any choices with far reaching consequences right away? What if we could just allow our emotions to flow through us without acting on those emotions? We're so action oriented in our society that this may sound unfathomable. What? Just feel our feelings? But what do we actually do? We have to be doing something, don't we? Here's what you do. You allow the emotion, and I like that word because emotion connotes energy and motion. You allow this energy and motion to flow through you without resisting it. This may feel weird, and you just let yourself feel weird. This doesn't necessarily mean that you sit there feeling weird without doing anything else, but it might. It's possible that you might just need to sit yourself down for a while and intentionally focus on allowing yourself to feel your intense emotions with immense curiosity for what the experience is like. Nothing wrong with doing that. But if you've got things to do, it is also possible to carry on with your normal business while you're feeling strange and overwhelmed and bursting with intense emotion. It may be very different from what you're used to feeling. And it may be very different from what you're used to doing when you're feeling intense feelings. But it is possible to allow intense feelings to just exist within you while you go about your routine life stuff. Remember, feelings are fundamentally vibrations in our bodies, they're energy and motion. We may not be used to allowing these vibrational currents to flow through us, so it can feel strange and awkward to do so. But it is possible. And with practice, it starts to feel a whole lot more familiar and full of ease or easeful or easy if you prefer. And the benefit of doing this is that when we allow our emotions to just flow through us, when we allow ourselves to feel our feelings in a deliberate way, we are able to refrain from acting out of our emotions in ways that don't really do us a whole lot of good. So let me clarify here. What I mean by carrying on your normal business while you're feeling strange and intense emotions means that you don't do anything related to the situation that is associated with the intense emotions, unless you absolutely have to. It means like, if you have to like go to work or wash your dog or go grocery shopping or whatever, you can do all of that stuff and also feel desire for this new amazing person you've met. You can do all of that stuff and also feel anxious about what's going to happen. You can do all that stuff and also tolerate uncertainty, right? That's different from taking action out of uncertainty to try and fix the uncertainty and try and do something about the situation that we associate with the uncertainty, right? So here are some examples of acting out of our emotions in ways that don't really do us a whole lot of good. If we're feeling guilty about something and if we're desperate to relieve ourselves of our guilt, we might attempt to put a stop to our infidelity situation or confess what we're doing immediately. And of course, this happens, right? Somebody cheats and then they feel terrible about it. So they decide to tell their partner right away without really knowing what the experience of cheating meant to them or what they want in terms of the relationship with the person they've cheated on or anything really. And if the information that you've cheated is handed over unframed without you taking the time to digest your feelings, what you're essentially doing is saying to the person you're confessing to, here's my mess. Now you deal with it. And in addition, and that, by the way, I mean, that, sometimes that goes over well, but sometimes it does not. And on top of that, some people are sure that if they confess, they'll get points for honesty, and they expect their partner to give them a pat on the back for having told the truth. And while I am not suggesting that there's never any benefit in honesty, or there's never any benefit in telling the truth swiftly, I do encourage you to be really clear about what you're planning to communicate and why it's important for you to communicate it if you want your truth telling to benefit you. We don't know for sure whether your truth telling will benefit the person you're confessing to. We just don't know that part. But you can decide in advance why it's important to you to tell the truth. But so often we don't make that decision very thoughtfully. We make that decision from our intense emotion. We think sometimes that telling the truth will relieve us of our guilt. But then as soon as we confess, oh my God, our partner is totally hurt and feels betrayed and feels angry. And then they get mad at us. And then we feel even more guilty. And maybe we also resent the person we confessed to for having the reaction they did. We wanted them to make us feel better. So we told the truth to relieve ourselves of our guilt. And instead, they got mad at us. So the point here is we want to be able to deal with our feelings as discrete units of experience. We want to be able to digest our own discomfort instead of believing that it's a signal that we must take action. And instead of doing things impulsively because we're feeling uncomfortable, we can't rely on taking action to relieve us of our discomfort. Sometimes it works temporarily. I'll give you that for sure, but it never works in the long term in any sustainable sense. Now, what refraining from taking impulsive action out of an intense emotional state may mean in practice may be that you continue your infidelity situation, even if you don't feel great about it in some ways. It may mean that you allow the situation to unfold while you allow yourself the opportunity to digest all of your crazy feelings and give yourself the opportunity to get clear on what you want to do. Now, again, this may mean that you don't rush to end the infidelity situation, even if you don't feel 100% good about being in it. It also means that you don't attempt to figure out the glorious future that you and your affair partner are going to have together. You don't indulge in anticipating how, everyone's going to react if you end your marriage and run off with your affair partner, right? Or whatever. The point is that whatever you think you have to figure out now, you probably don't, and you probably can't. There's a difference between working to create your future and trying to predict your future. In order to decide the future you want to create, you may need to allow yourself some time in your state of limbo, right? You might need to allow yourself time to keep doing what you're doing before you can arrive at a solution that's truly right for you. And giving yourself permission to stay in limbo may be pretty difficult if you're very focused on the idea that what you're doing is bad. But here's the thing, people. If you are willingly engaging in your infidelity situation, and I certainly hope you are, because otherwise, why are you doing it? You're getting something out of it that is important to you. And it's important to give yourself the opportunity to identify what that is and take that seriously. Believe me, it is important to honor your commitments to other people, right? I am not discounting that. I'm not discounting that it may be really challenging to continue deceiving someone while you're allowing yourself time to figure your shit out. But here's the thing. Your commitments to other people are important, but it is also incredibly important for you to tend to your relationship with yourself. And that includes allowing yourself to be honest with yourself about what you want, even if what you want isn't what you are, quote unquote, supposed to want. So this can be a really interesting and challenging moment in time if you're allowing an infidelity situation to continue while you get your thoughts in order. Because on the one hand, you may want to resolve your situation as quickly as possible. But on the other hand, you may not know what you want to do about it. And as I've been saying during this episode, you're probably going to need to allow the intensity of your emotions to dissipate before you can make any clear decisions, right? So we have to allow for some contradictions here. We may not be comfortable with cheating. We may not be comfortable with deception, but at the same time, we've got to allow ourselves to get clear on our deeper desires beyond just avoiding doing the bad things in order to come to conclusions about what we want that are true for us. And on that note, I'm going to zoom out a little and talk about the bigger picture here. When we are in the throes of any situation that seems stressful for us, whether it has to do with infidelity or not, and we believe we're being presented with a conflict of some sort, we may get very focused on the specifics of the matters at hand. And that's sort of appropriate. You do need to deal with the actual details of whatever your stressful situation is or your infidelity situation in some way or another, right? But Your infidelity situation or any other stressful situation is never just about the specifics of the matters at hand. It's also about your growth and evolution as a human who is living one wild and precious life, to paraphrase the poet Mary Oliver. We make such a big deal about being faithful to other people and faithful to shared ideals and faithful to social norms and faithful to commitments we've made. And although all of that stuff is fine and good and important, committing to other people and being faithful to other people and other things is going to be pretty hollow if we aren't committed to our own truths and if we aren't being faithful to ourselves. And sometimes when we aren't being faithful to ourselves, we find ourselves in situations that effectively force us to refine our sense of what fidelity to ourself might mean. Or we find ourselves in situations that give us the opportunity to consider what it might mean to be faithful to ourselves for the very first time ever. If we've been living less than consciously for any period of time, we may need a rather dramatic event to wake us up and show us the opportunity we have to engage in our lives in a more conscious way. And I want to suggest that this is a sacred opportunity that is to be taken very seriously. An intensely exciting and intensely stressful infidelity situation may seem really hard to deal with. It may seem super overwhelming, and it may seem like a giant inconvenience if we were just humming along and attempting to get by in our lives. And I certainly understand the desire to just keep your head down and get by. And yet, is that what you want your life to have been about when it's all said and done? Just getting by, doing the things that other people want you to do just because they want you to do them? Is that the point for you? You get to decide, and there aren't any right or wrong answers. But so often we believe that we don't really have choices in life and that we just have to do certain things, even if we don't want to do things. And that is never as true as we think it is. People want to argue with me about that point all the time, but that's okay. I am always up for that discussion, right? We never have to do the things we think we have to do, period. We can choose to do things for reasons that we like, right? We can even choose to do things for reasons that we don't like, but that's very different from believing that we have to do things. In addition to your infidelity situation being an opportunity to practice experiencing your feelings without having to do anything about them. Brand new, super intense, knock you off course infidelity situation is also an excellent opportunity for you to be really honest with yourself about what you want in your life. It's an excellent opportunity for you to question your beliefs about what choices you have, what choices you want to make, and what your beliefs are about what you have to do, or your beliefs about what you can do and can't do. And frankly, if you care about being faithful to others and honest with others, I want to suggest that you have to consider questions like these. If your commitments to others are predicated on what you think you have to do, you may want to take a close look at those commitments and how you're engaging in those commitments. And I encourage you to do all of this stuff instead of making knee-jerk decisions about what to do about your infidelity situation. Now, this does not mean that you put off making decisions indefinitely. That is not what I'm encouraging. I probably should have said that 18 times already in this episode. I'm not suggesting that by giving yourself time to slow down and clarify what you want, that you get to kick the can down the road indefinitely. But I am encouraging you to slow down in a moment in time when you may not want to slow down, right? Doing that may require you to experiment with tolerating discomfort or tolerating intensely pleasurable emotions that may ironically be uncomfortable, instead of looking for ways to fix these feelings or avoid these feelings or obliterate the situation that these feelings are associated with. And doing these things, slowing down and feeling your feelings may seem really strange and difficult when A, you just want to jump out of your skin because you are so overwhelmed with emotion, and B, you aren't in the habit of slowing down and feeling your feelings. But that's okay. Most new habits can feel pretty odd and they're developing. That oddness isn't a bad thing. It's an indicator of growth and change. Being willing to slow down and deal with our emotions so that we can think clearly and comprehensively about what we want is a skill that benefits us in all areas of our lives, right? It doesn't just apply to your current infidelity situation. Okay, people, if you're in the midst of a new and fresh and intense infidelity situation, good luck. Hang in there, ride the ride, enjoy the experience of being human. And I want to say that it's one thing to hear me talk about all this stuff on the podcast, and it's another thing to have my support in applying the concepts and practices I talk about to the specifics of your own life. So if you want my help learning how to adopt the approaches I've talked about today, let's work together. I offer compassionate, confidential relationship coaching via Zoom so we can work together no matter where you're located. To schedule an introductory coaching session with me, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Have an amazing week. I will talk to you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.